Hello and good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the webinar, AnyAbility, Serving Adults with Disabilities. My name is Courtney Brown, and I'm the Southeast Regional Coordinator from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I'll be the host and question moderator today. I'd like to start off the webinar with a few announcements. To register for other webinars or other trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library. For a full list of our current in-person training menu, please see our continuing education website. The Indiana State Library has many ways we try to stay connected to library staff across the state. For weekly updates on upcoming trainings and to learn more about what's happening in libraries across the state, please subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter, The Wednesday Word. We also offer a blog which provides information about the Indiana State Collection, interview spotlights on library staff from across the state, and information about upcoming events at the Indiana State Library. If you have a question, just type it in the chat box on the upper left side of the screen. I'll be watching and I'll get your question to our presenters at the end of their presentation. This session is about an hour, so you'll get one LEU for today. After the presentation is ended, please stay logged in to download your LEU. We'll also have a link to a survey about the presentation. If you're watching an archived recording of this webinar, instructions on how to obtain your LEU are in the video's description on YouTube. If at any point during the webinar you experience any sound issues, please see the sound issues box just below the chat box on the left side of the screen. If there's a global sound issue, we will announce it in the chat box. If you are unable to resolve the sound issues you're experiencing, we are recording this meeting and you can watch it online after the meeting has ended. Again, if there is a global sound issue, we will make an announcement in the chat box. We have three presenters from Anythink Libraries in Colorado with us here today. Marsha Marcilla is the branch supervisor at Anythink Libraries in Adams County, Colorado. She attended the University of New Mexico with an emphasis on business administration and is currently attending Colorado Christian University, pursuing a degree in human resources and personnel management. Marsha is passionate about the people she works with and serving her community. She has worked with the AnyAbility program since its inception in April 2014. Hannah Martinez is a concierge at the Anythink Libraries in Adams County, Colorado. She played an integral role in developing AnyAbility, Anythink's program for adults with disabilities. Hannah's desire to foster inclusion and promote dignity, combined with her passion for library services, led her to create a number of experiences tailored specifically for this group of library customers. For her work with AnyAbility, now in its 5th year, Hannah was awarded the 2015 Lucy Schweers Award for Excellence in Paralibrarianship from the Colorado Association of Libraries. And Mayo is an adult guide at the Anythink Libraries in Adams County, Colorado. She received her MLIS from the University of South Carolina and is the recipient of the 2017 South Carolina Library Association Scholarship for Diversity in Librarianship. Maria is a passionate advocate for the expansion of services to diverse populations. For the past 2 years, Maria has worked with the AnyAbility program to provide meaningful and empowering experiences for adults with disabilities at the library. Without further ado, I will now turn the presentation over to Marsha, Hannah, and Maria.
Hi everyone, thank you for taking the time to sit in on this webinar. We hope to relay our passion for this population, not only in the way that we've chosen to provide AnyAbility as a programming opportunity, but in the way it has enriched the lives of all involved. President Obama reminds us in this quote that change is possible. We only need to act on the desire for it. Libraries are the perfect place for change to begin. First, a little background on the AnyAbility program. The staff at Anythink Right Farms were often approached by day group providers inquiring about programming for adults with disabilities. On any given day in our branch, we would have 5 to 7 day groups consisting of 6 to 8 adults utilizing the services of the library. The need and the desire to offer a program designed for this population had its own champion on our staff, Hannah Martinez. Hannah had previous experience working with adults with physical and cognitive disabilities. This prior experience helped provide an increased level of confidence as the team began researching and planning what AnyAbility would look like going forward. At Anythink, AnyAbility is both a specific program and a philosophy. AnyAbility became more of a concept that was not just about programming for adults with disabilities. It became a concept of creating a space and an environment that adults with disabilities could utilize confidently and independently. A place where they could thrive and participate in activities intended for everyone. As we discovered, many day groups did not always receive a warm welcome or a feeling of inclusivity in the library setting. In order to utilize the library, they would often come in the library, avoiding contact with staff while trying to establish an area where they could set up without drawing attention. The inception of AnyAbility began to change all of this. The team knew that there would need to be a degree of culture shift to make this a worthwhile and sustainable change. ALA's Services for People with Disability policy and interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights, the American Library Association recognizes that people with disabilities are a large and vibrant part of our society. Libraries should be fully inclusive of all members of their community and strive to break down barriers to access. The library can play a transformational role in helping facilitate more complete participation in society by providing fully accessible resources and services. Libraries are committed to providing equal access to collections, services, and facilities for all library users.
Becoming a library that feels welcoming to all abilities doesn't happen overnight. It truly is a process and takes a significant amount of thought and planning. The first question to ask is the physical space itself accessible? Apart from meeting ADA guidelines, there is a lot that can be done to meet the needs of individuals with disabilities. For example, a few years ago, Anythink changed signage with outdated terminology such as handicapped parking to reflect more inclusive language. For clarity, inclusive signage for parking spaces reserved for those with limited mobility usually shows the universal image of a person in a wheelchair and says parking only, sometimes including van accessible. We also recently acquired an electric scooter for use inside our main branch for patrons with limited mobility. Additionally, we have an iPad available loaded with 8 apps for staff to use when communication barriers arise with customers, such as a text-to-sign language generator with a 30,000-word database and a customizable picture communication app, which allows those with little to no verbal communication skills to speak through pointing at pictures. An easy way to test the accessibility of your space is to set out an in-branch survey with a few simple questions that will help you determine the needs of your own community. You can also do some research to see if you have a Center for People with Disabilities nearby that can point you to resources and technology you could implement, depending, of course, on your budget. But even on a limited budget, there are many small changes that can be made to make a big and positive impact on someone's day. For more information on how to ensure a more accessible and disability-friendly library space, please visit pla.org and search for the term Universal Access for a plethora of webinars, articles, and a checklist related to physical access.
Like Maria said, becoming a library that feels welcoming to all abilities doesn't happen overnight. It is a process, and in the case of developing a staff that is welcoming to customers with disabilities, the approach is different than creating a welcoming space. Simply put, a welcoming library staff treats all customers equally. It is powerful and transforming when existing library staff are role models and support each other, incoming staff and other library customers, demonstrating inclusion and people-first language, which we will discuss in a moment. Try to make the deliberate and conscious choice as a staff to overcome attitudinal barriers, such as pity, fear, and stereotyping, and treat customers with disabilities the same as all customers, as this is a big step towards a fully inclusive library community. When adults with disabilities are asked to access materials and services independently, and when library staff provides a place where they can confidently and independently conduct business and recreate, it empowers them and equalizes them. One example of how Anythink treats all customers equally is requiring our AnyAbility customers to have library cards to get on computers and check out materials. Anythink requires a photo ID to get a library card, as well as a replacement card. We reserve temporary passes for extenuating circumstances. Therefore, we ask that our AnyAbility customers have an ID to get initial or replacement cards, and that they bring their library card every time they visit the library. This has been a process and continues to be, and it does raise conversations with care providers. But we have decided as a management team and staff that this is an equalizing, fair, and legitimate request, as it is the process for issuing library cards to all of our adult customers. Again, in all situations, we try to remember that a welcoming library staff treats all customers equally. People-first language is simple and it is crucial. People-first language emphasizes the person, not the disability. It declares that people with disabilities are first and foremost people who have individual abilities, interests, and needs. For example, a person who wears glasses doesn't say, "I have a problem seeing." They say, "I wear or I need glasses." Or a person who uses a wheelchair doesn't say, "I have a problem walking." They say, "I need or I use a wheelchair." During a 2018 interview, a staff member named Karina is quoted saying, "As much as I seek out the opportunity to make a difference in someone's day, I used to be very hesitant about working directly with adults with disabilities. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't feel like I had the right qualifications." Karina reflects on this transformation by recounting an interaction with a frequent library customer named Jessica. Jessica approached her about needing help using the library's computers. Having only met this customer once before, Karina organically replied to Jessica's request by saying, "Let's go take a look." Jessica then politely replied that she was legally blind, that taking a look was precisely the thing that she needed help with. This interaction prompted Karina to take a deeper look at how some common phrases might impact a person with a disability. In this particular case, the customer was understanding of the word choice, realizing that Karina was using the common expression, "Let's go take a look," as a way to say, "Let's head over to the computers and figure this out together." "I was immediately full of embarrassment," recalls Karina. "I think she heard it in my voice. Either that or she was just a really sweet person, but she helped ease my discomfort. It was an example of a role reversal of customer and employee, where she was helping me." As you can see from Karina's experience with Jessica, working with a customer with a disability is not any different from working with other customers. Outside of people-first language and focusing on the individual, which should be centric in interactions with all customers, we're going to talk about other key tips that will drive courteous and respectful interactions that promote and encourage dignity and independence. These tips are listed in no particular order. It is preferred to speak to the customer, not to their interpreter or companion. Do your best to speak in a natural tone of voice at an adult to adult level. Try to make eye contact with an individual who is deaf, facing them, speaking slowly and clearly. When speaking to a customer who is blind, try to face them and call him or her by name, speaking slowly and clearly. When speaking to a customer with intellectual disabilities, keep it simple while maintaining the individual's dignity, and if necessary, team up with their companion to reach a point of understanding or comprehension. Ask questions, listen to the answers, and try not to make assumptions. Again, do your best to speak in a natural tone of voice at an adult to adult level. When working with a customer who uses a wheelchair or walker, ask before you assist them or lean on their wheelchair or walker, as it is an extension of their person and an invasion of their personal space. When conversing with a customer who has speech or language impairments or intellectual disabilities, ask questions and take time to listen to their answers, speaking slowly and clearly. Try not to finish sentences or assume or pretend to know what a customer is saying. Try not to make assumptions about a person's abilities based on their appearance. Try not to let communication barriers stump you. Try breaking down questions and statements into small, manageable bits that can be easily answered and remembered. Or it may work to repeat or rephrase questions and statements, use a pen and paper, or use a tablet with communication apps. You can use these techniques the other way around too. Ask the customer you are working with to repeat or rephrase a tricky question or statement, or use a pen and paper to communicate. Again, it may be necessary to utilize a companion or interpreter to break down communication barriers and come to a place of understanding or comprehension. Set boundaries. You are a likable person, and you are showing interest in and kindness to an individual that functions in a world that does not accept folks with disabilities and differences as readily as those without. You are leading the charge and making a difference. In doing this, you may find that typical physical and verbal boundaries may be crossed. And it is important to set boundaries that you're comfortable with. It is likely that this will look different for most library staff members. For example, when an AnyAbility customer tells me that he or she loves me, I respond with, "I like you too, Jennifer," and I am comfortable giving hugs where many of the staff at Anythink gives handshakes. And relax. A customer with a disability is no different than any other customer. It is okay if you, quote unquote, make a mistake. It is okay if you happen to use a common expression such as "see you later," or "let's walk over here and take a look," that seem to relate to a person's disability. Give yourself a break and be confident. You'll nail it next time. Relationships are rewarding. This is the best part, not only about developing a program like AnyAbility, but about changing the culture of your library. Ask questions like, "What did you do this weekend?" or find a common interest that makes conversation come easily. Hopefully, relationships between library staff, caregivers, and this group of customers will develop, blossom, and thrive as the program grows and the culture shifts. This photograph was taken on Halloween of our branch manager, Rebecca. She loves to dress up for any occasion and join in the party. Isn't she a gorgeous mermaid? Her costume is homemade. Joining her in the photo is an AnyAbility customer who dressed up as a mermaid for Halloween too. We think they make the perfect pair.
Now that we have taken a look at AnyAbility as a concept, let's take a look at where we get our ideas for programming. Anythink's strategic plan serves as one of our guides when it comes to deciding our approach to programs for the year. The 3 pillars of the Anythink strategic plan are community. People are happy, healthy, and safe. Culture. People are enriched by learning and culture. Career. People are prosperous and creative. Given that so much of what we do falls into one of these categories, it makes sense that we would use them for inspiration and direction when planning programming. Another aspect we consider, especially with AnyAbility in mind, is what would adults in our community enjoy or appreciate? When working with adults with disabilities, it is important to remember that they are adults. They enjoy and participate in many of the same activities and interests as you and me. This could include music, dancing, gardening, cooking, or exploring a creative side. The AnyAbility team strives to provide meaningful experiences over creating make and takes. While there is often a craft or takeaway at an AnyAbility program, the team tries to focus on the journey, not the destination. This allows participants to focus on being in the moment, creating connections, and having fun. A recent focus of an AnyAbility program was creating rain sticks. The participants utilized different materials such as paper towel tubes and rice to simulate the sound of rain. We provided different embellishments in order to capture the individual personalities of the participants. While attendees worked on creating their rain stick, there was a video playing of an actual rain dance using rain sticks. This provided a cultural experience along with the opportunity to explore different customs and delve into the tradition of a rain dance. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. In other words, seek out resources in your community. Some of the best programs have come from incorporating people who are passionate about what they do outside of the library world. Advocates for adults with disabilities come in the most unlikely places. So don't shy away from approaching someone who may not specialize in working with this demographic. They may not have been given the opportunity. A small business that we partnered with provided modified kickboxing and fitness training for adults with varying abilities. We had participants boxing from their wheelchairs and one individual who had had her toes amputated due to circulation issues, kickboxing so passionately you would have never guessed she had any issues. Incorporate variety. In the beginning, it was easier for us to maintain a similar structure to the AnyAbility programs. As the program continued to grow, we became more intentional in keeping it fresh, mixing up the structure and focus. For instance, one month we would have a passive program that included a storyteller and a craft, while another month we would have an interactive acting workshop and finish with a karaoke dance party.
Inspired by the strategic plan, ideas for adult-level activities, ways to incorporate variety, use community resources, and provide meaningful experiences, we are ready to put these ideas into action. When you set out to choose an activity or craft for your program, it is important to be thoughtful and intentional, as this will help drive your program's success. Participants are less likely to become bored or frustrated when they are challenged appropriately and will be eager to return to see what you choose for next month. Since we're organizing programming for adults, try to focus your searches on adult-level crafts and activities while avoiding childlike ones. Ask yourself these questions. If the activity or craft is a make and take, is the completed project something that you would want to give or receive? When the activity or craft is broken down into steps, can participants with limited manual dexterity and fine motor skills complete some or at least one of the steps? If you are planning something that is physically active, can it be modified so that all registrants can participate in some way? As with most programs that require supplies and materials, registration is important. It helps with planning and preparation, both for purchasing materials and space. For a number of reasons, such as fluctuating day program staff, an unknown number of participants, and drop-ins, registration has been difficult with AnyAbility. Another concern that day program staff have expressed is that they don't know the names of the individuals they'll be working with on any given day. So they don't know who to register. We have developed a solution that works better than any other we have tried. We encourage folks to register with a generic first name and last name. For example, for an individual's first name, we ask them to use the name of the agency they are affiliated with. And for their last name, to use the number 1, number 2, etc. as placeholders. This way we have a head count. After all, the most important thing is knowing how many participants will be in the program, not the names of the participants. While encouraging independence is always important, some assistance and teamwork will probably be necessary throughout the program. Library staff will play a key, hands-on role during a program like AnyAbility by roving the room and providing assistance to whoever needs it. A program like AnyAbility thrives with community volunteers and many support staff, including the caregivers that accompany the participants. In fact, the success of the program depends on the caregiver's assistance as well. It truly is a team effort. Programs run smoothest when there is one person to assist every 3 to 5 participants.
So you've got a great idea. You're all ready to implement. Now comes the question that haunts every programming librarian. How do you get people to actually come to your program? For starters, consistency is best. Like any regular library programming, it's important to host the program on the same day or days every month. For example, the first Tuesday morning of every month, so that participants and their caregivers can plan ahead. It's also great to be able to announce at the end of the program what the activity for next time will be, and to invite everyone back to garner more interest for a return. In terms of actually getting the word out, outreach is key, not only at the start, but on an ongoing basis. There are probably local group programs in your area that facilitate daily activities for adults with disabilities. These organizations make great partners and currently make up about 90% of our regular attendance for AnyAbility. If you're unsure of how to find contact information for these groups, the internet search phrases community integration or community participation or day programs for adults with disabilities will be helpful, and then try to find the contact information for the program or activities coordinator. We keep an updated email list for these coordinators as well as higher functioning participants and individual caregivers, and like to send out periodic reminders when something really special is being planned. Email is great and can do wonders, but a personal connection speaks volumes. While it's never fair or appropriate to assume a present disability on a first impression, as you build relationships with patrons with disabilities or their loved ones and start to feel more comfortable around one another, take opportunities to sell your program in person. Remember that these kinds of activities are some of the most comfortable and empowering experiences you can offer to an often ostracized population. By hosting this program, you are providing a meaningful and important service. Be proud and spread the word. We also get the word out through a monthly web event and through flyers in our branch. When promoting the program through these means, it's important to use appropriate language. Be sure to promote the activity itself, give very clear directions on how to register, and include a sentence that lets people know that this is an activity that is accessible to all. We usually use the following language. This program is open to all and designed specifically for adults with disabilities.
It's important to remember that just as we as individuals like to experience new things, we as a library want to encourage exploration of new ideas and experiences. We continue to explore ways to bring art, culture, community-minded experiences to AnyAbility.
We wanted to highlight a few of our favorite AnyAbility programs from this past year. This is a photo taken during an improv theater workshop we hosted alongside local actors from Family Theater Company, with whom we've developed an active and thriving partnership. Around summertime last year, we gave each participant an air plant to take home, and we all made little containers for our air plants using air-dry clay. In this program, which we called Take a Selfie, we had several stations set up, all of which had to do with the concept of a self-portrait. In one corner, we had easels and mirrors set up where participants could draw themselves. In another corner, we had large backdrops and Polaroid cameras for taking photos. And finally, we hired a local portrait artist to come in and do portraits of participants, either alone or with a friend. It was so much fun, and a great way to utilize a local artist. In addition to the theater group and portrait artist, just this past year we've hosted a Zumba instructor, a nutritionist, a few park rangers, a storyteller, holiday carolers, and more. Local experts are amazing, and in my experience are thrilled to have the opportunity to work with our group. Not only is it a valuable and empowering experience for our participants to learn a new skill or hear professional musicians, it's also rewarding for the experts themselves. Here's a quote from Elizabeth, one of our recently hired experts who facilitated the art project you see proudly displayed in this slide. What stood out to me was how gracious the participants were and the number of volunteers helping facilitate. It was great to see the participants realize creative potential. I was also very moved by the gratitude from the participants. It was rewarding and affirming.
As I mentioned before, developing relationships is one of the most rewarding outcomes from a program like AnyAbility. Because the Anythink team has made a deliberate effort to reach out to local service agencies and individuals to participate in AnyAbility programming, our participants have had the opportunity to meet friends they may not have had the chance to meet otherwise. Friendships have developed between folks from different service agencies, and some friendships extend beyond the library walls. 2 AnyAbility participants, one woman that comes with her mother and one woman that comes with her one-on-one care provider, have developed a meaningful relationship, as have their caregivers. These women spend time outside of the library, enjoying each other's company, having lunch, shopping, and chatting, as friends do. Another thing that a program like AnyAbility allows is an organized, safe, and casual meeting spot for folks to come together and foster established friendships and romantic relationships once a month. Marsha has another personal and touching story to share about how relationships extend beyond the library walls.
Something that I've learned, and there have been many things, is to recognize the value of relationships we have built through AnyAbility. This past New Year's Eve, I experienced an incident that reminded me of the extended community I have been so fortunate to be a part of, and how this permeates beyond the walls of Anythink. As I mentioned, it was New Year's Eve, and my husband and I were picking up some last-minute items from Costco. If any of you shop at Costco or Sam's Club, I'm sure you can relate to how chaotic it can be during those last-minute shopping sprees. As we were making our way through our shopping list, I noticed one of our AnyAbility customers experiencing a crisis. He had clearly become frustrated with the whole Costco experience. He was lashing out, kicking and punching everything and anything in his way, including his care provider. While we would not officially say we have favorites, Joe is someone that has captured the hearts of many of our library staff, from the Director of Customer Experience to the staff that shelf the collection. So this behavior seemed to be very out of character for him. As other customers began to notice and gather, the care provider, feeling more than a little overwhelmed in the moment, signaled for someone to call security. By this time, Joe fell to the floor, exhausted. I knelt down by Joe and I was able to get him to look at me. He is quite fond of Hannah and Maria, so I talked about when he would be coming to the library next and be able to catch up with them. Joe's care provider and I were able to help Joe get up. As he calmed down, so did the situation. I told security that I thought we were okay. I offered to walk with them to the checkout. The care provider explained that they were trying to get some food for a New Year's Eve party they were having. I offered to wait with Joe while she gathered the last few items to complete their trip. Joe broke down in my arms and cried. He told me he was thirsty and just wanted to go home. I commiserated with him. Costco can be a little much on a good day. The care provider returned and expressed her gratitude. She told me God sent just what she needed when she needed it. This meant so much to me, not because I thought that I was the hero of the story, but because it reaffirmed what AnyAbility is all about, building community. If I had not had the opportunity to work with adults in this way, I would have been another person standing on the sidelines. As it was, I had the confidence that I could interact with Joe. I was able to provide enough of a distraction that he calmed down and was able to leave without any further incident. A win for everybody. My journey with AnyAbility has been filled with moments of uncertainty, humility, kindness, joy, and reward. Anythink and AnyAbility have created a safe space to explore new ideas and friendships. It is easy to believe that we are providing a service to our community when it has actually done so much to enrich the lives of our staff. I am honored to be a part of this culture shift at Anythink that has moved beyond our walls and out into the community.
After spending 5 years establishing AnyAbility, ironing out a lot of wrinkles and continually fine-tuning the program, it is exciting that we have a guaranteed space that folks can count on to socialize once a month. We have become not just a place filler on the monthly activity calendar, but a go-to spot. We are a #1 choice because we have created an inclusive community and shifted the culture in our library. We use people-first language, treat everyone equally, and always treat AnyAbility customers with dignity, patience, and kindness. Like we've discussed, this culture shift and the gradual formation of a more inclusive community have been a challenge in some ways. But the reaped rewards far surpass these challenges. As you are looking to make similar changes in your library, remember to treat all customers equally, model people-first language, and use varied adult-level activities in your programs. Even more importantly, have confidence, support one another, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You are leading the charge and shifting the culture in your library. Again, thanks for being the change that we seek. After all, a community that excludes even one of its members is no community at all.
As Hannah said, thank you for being here and for listening. This ends our presentation, but before we open it up for questions, I did want to mention that our Works Cited page is here at the end of our PowerPoint should you want to reference it later. And with that, Courtney, we will turn it over to you to start the Q&A.
Great, thanks guys, that was wonderful. So we've had a few questions come in here. First one, recently I've seen a lot of individuals and special communities say that they don't like person-first language. I heard this especially with autism recently. What are your thoughts on that?
So the answer to that question would be that the I'm sorry, I get kind of nervous.
Oh, you're fine. I think the priority is the individual, and it's really important to feel comfortable enough to ask those questions. And I think, you know, we all have a sense of when someone is uncomfortable, and it's okay to clarify that. And I think, what were you guys going to say?
Well, and it depends on the community. So some communities use identity first language, like the autistic community prefers to be identified as autistic. The deaf community prefers to be identified as deaf rather than hearing impaired, rather than a person that has autism. And in the blind, in the, you know, visually impaired, that's either or. But it really depends on the community as well. So, and that would be identity first language.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What do you do if one of your AnyAbility participants is not eligible for a library card? For example, they don't have a photo ID.
So we have found, at least in the state of Colorado, that all of the adults have some type of picture ID in order to identify, especially if they are going to a provider. We have found, right, that Colorado issues state IDs.
Yes, and then the providers, the care providers that come in from the day programs have notebooks or have the information on their phones because they work with the groups that way. So they either have a binder or the information on their telephones for emergency purposes. So they can't travel without that. And there is a photograph of the individual in that binder, and so they carry their photographs, and it really just needs to be their photograph and their name, and then.
Well, and in our, we don't strictly go by state IDs either. So if there is an agency that has a photo ID and that verifies the name, we would take that as well.
Yeah, with just the name and photograph. And I also wanted to clarify that for the actual, that what we just talked about was in regards to getting a library card. But when it comes to the actual program, they don't have to have a library card to attend our program. And that's actually across the board for any Anythink program. You just have to put your first and last name. And in the case of AnyAbility, like Hannah mentioned, we just ask if it's a group that they just write, like if the care group's name is ABLE, for instance, that would just be like ABLE 1, ABLE 2, ABLE 3, so that we have an idea of how many people will come. So we don't like check library cards at the door or anything like that.
Great. Do you ever have more people interested than you have room for? And I'm going to kind of piggyback on this because you said that your programs need one helper for every 3 to 5 participants. So how big are your programs? How many staff are involved? Do you ever have to turn people away?
There are situations where we have to rely strictly on on our registration. So as much as we want to open our doors to everyone, sometimes, like, because we've become so successful, we have to cap it at about 40 participants. So we regularly have about 40. Sometimes we can squeeze in more if it's something that's that doesn't require supplies or that kind of thing. But most of the time, we do kind of have to be a little more rigid about, like, the groups that have signed up and registered. And then we always, try to clarify with the folks that we don't allow that we can't let in that day, that we make sure to follow up with them and make sure they know how to register for the next time. Oh, and you asked about staff. So we have 3 of us are pretty much always in the program, and then we tend to have 1 to 2 volunteers. So that's kind of what we roll with.
Along with the caregivers. So the caregivers are great with giving us a hand, and then we just kind of fill in around that.
Yeah.
So if it's something that is a little bit more intensive and requires, we usually have about 5 of us along with, I don't know, 5 of them, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
About 5
Yeah.
caregivers.
Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, going back to that people first language versus the identity first language, is there any way for us to know what those communities are, or is it just a learning process?
Like to know what language to use with what community, you mean?
Yeah, if it's an identity first community.
And I don't know. I mean, I guess I would look to maybe contacting some of the, providers or people in the community that work with those populations and see how they utilize that language. If it is a people first or if it is an identity first scenario, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's good to look to the experts on that kind of topic. Yeah. And I don't think any of us claim to be experts on people first language or identity first language, but our main priority is compassion for the person in front of us, and recognizing that wherever they're at, we're gonna be on their side.
Mm-hmm. And I would say to err on the side of people first language, to err on the side of putting the person before the disability. That
Great,
would
thanks.
never, I would always err on that side.
And be open to correction.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is something I think that we have all learned is it's an ongoing learning process.
Mm-hmm.
And that we do constantly have to kind of tweak according to what we learn in the moment. And it's just like many things that can be one way today and something different tomorrow. So, yeah.
Great. What communication apps do you use?
Do you have them off the top of your head?
I don't. If there's a way that I could get that to you guys, I'm really sorry I don't have it in front of me.
But we could send that to Courtney.
Yeah, is there a way?
Absolutely. You can send that to me, and then I will send that out with the webinar recording to everyone so we can all have that information.
Thank
Okay,
you, Courtney.
thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Okay, next question. Do you have any sort of policy for forgiving overdue fines for adults with disabilities? They often rely on caregivers to get them to the library. I find that many people in group homes are constantly running up fines and finding themselves unable to borrow.
I think that's a valid concern. Anythink is a fine-free library, so our library district does not charge daily late fines. That's not to say that items don't go to lost, and we don't, and we do have to have those conversations. Usually, again, it's having an adult conversation with the person, and their privileges are suspended until they're able to return that item. So there is a consequence. While it's not usually a monetary one, it can be. But really, it's having that conversation, letting them know that, until they get that back, they won't be able to utilize the services, utilize the computers, or check out anything. And usually that's enough incentive for them to go and take a look at it, look for it. If that doesn't, then there is a different conversation that we have as far as, how are we going to get the fines taken care of. I would say that every once in a while we do forgive them, but in that accountability of treating them as any other customer, we do, try to maintain that.
Not a given.
Right.
And it's nice to have a reminder for anyone, of course. Like I usually will print out the titles that we're missing and have and maybe write a little note on there that says, please return as soon as possible, just as a reminder, because a lot of them go to these programs and then go home and then may not come back to the library until they see their program provider again. And so it's nice to have something to physically take home as a reminder to bring those items back.
Mm-hmm. And we also have the conversation with caregivers too, that they can enjoy the items while they're here in the library. So if it is someone that they know to be forgetful or things get moved around, we have actually established a really great relationship with a lot of our caregivers that come through the door, and we're able to have those conversations with them. So
that's a great lead into our next question. How do you encourage their caregivers and companions to participate in the programs?
I think relationships are key. I think
totally.
Like 100% word of mouth or in any way we can. We want that caregiver to feel like they're a part of the experience, and so we just ask them to attend alongside their loved one or the person in their group.
Mm-hmm. And I think they look to us as well. I think because we are in hands-on participating as well, in order for them to have a great experience.
Yeah.
I think we found that the caregivers, jump right in too.
And enjoy the experience as much as
absolutely. And they make stuff
mm-hmm.
too.
Right. So they get to actually be one of the participants.
Right.
Which is, rewarding for them.
And we're all just living to see the smiles on their faces and, really have fun with them.
Uh-huh.
And because we're choosing those adult level activities and crafts, it's always something that the caregivers want to make and take home, and so they also enjoy making them too.
Or seeing carolers perform, or seeing a theater troupe do their thing. It's the ballet.
Yeah, they're super excited to be there as well.
Someone is wondering about how much you communicate with the managers of the day programs as opposed to the direct service providers who come with the customers.
Usually that communication happens through the caregivers. I would say, like, if we're initially reaching out to a new group, we would, have to kind of unfortunately go through the ladder and start at the top with whoever's communication is provided online. But in the majority of the cases, the caregivers are so excited that there's this experience at the library that they go back and tell their coordinators and get it on the calendar. Yeah.
And we have had really great luck. We actually had one of the director
of
Janet?
The day programs.
Yeah, the director of the day programs present at PLA with Hannah a couple of years ago. So we do have a really great relationship with them. They're certainly there, but if we have questions, but most of the time we're able to, because we do have a good relationship with the caregivers, and they know that we're on their side. We're usually able to work through just about anything that comes up or there would be a question about.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, thank you. It looks like we have a comment about how kindness is key and can go a long way. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to type those in the chat box now. We have about 6 more minutes that we could stay on to answer questions. While that's happening, I am going to move over to the LEU pod, and you should be able to download your LEU. There at the top of the screen, you just need to highlight AnyAbility LEU certificate and click download file. You can go ahead and download your LEU for today. There's also a survey link in the middle of the page. If you could fill that out, let us know how we're doing. And then Marsha, Hannah, and Maria's contact information is there at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to contact them with any further questions. Looks like we have another question coming in, is this type of program something one staff member can run? There is no extra staff available to help me with any of my adult programs.
Volunteers are your friend. I would say yes, you absolutely can. And starting off, you probably will have a smaller group. So I think yes, with with help, and feel free to ask your caregivers, like be honest with your caregivers about the amount of help you need in the beginning of the program. We often do that just as a simple reminder. We'll say, volunteers and caregivers, like please jump in when necessary, or that kind of thing. It's totally fine to ask that, because again, they also are there because of their passion for this population, and they want just as much as you do to have a positive outcome. So go ahead.
And the caregivers are there during their workday, working with the participants as well. And so during the program that you're running, they are working. And so hopefully, they're on, during their work time, they're working with their the person that they're working with as well.
Yep. Yeah. And I think the other thing with that too is that you in our groups, as you saw in that one big group picture, right, we have people of all abilities. So they are going to, so it's not everyone that's going to need more help. Some people will be really just like good to go and give it their all on their own, with maybe just touching base with them. And then there will be some that you almost need to do the craft for, or whatever we're doing, so that they have something to take as well. So I think you just got to keep in mind that there's a little bit of a mix. Gauge the size of how many people you think you could handle. So as far as the size of your program, since there's 3 of us, we've had upwards of 55 people in one spot at one time. But again, we have the help. So you just want to gauge that on what your scale is.
Wonderful, thank you. We have about 3 more minutes and a couple more questions here, so we'll try to get through those. Again, you can go ahead and download your LEU certificate. If you are watching an archived version, instructions on how to get your LEU certificate are in the YouTube description. It looks like we have 3 more questions. We'll try to get those answered. Are there programs that work well with nursing home residents?
I would say that's probably a different topic entirely. It depends on the individual and their abilities. If actually I see there's another question that kind of lumps into this. Anyone is welcome to our programs, regardless of whether they are a person with disabilities or not. That's why we say in our description on our flyer, this program is open to all and designed specifically for adults with disabilities, because we want to be clear that we don't discriminate. And yes, we do often, or not often, but sometimes we have people who just want to come. Like we had a few people who just thought that it would be really cool to make a rain stick and came to that program. And actually, it was really neat to see those interactions, because they were helping out like individuals that needed help. And one of them came up to me afterwards and just was like gushing. So I mean, it is a program that's open to all.
Wonderful. Last question for today. Say I want to start up a program like this. What are the first few things you suggest doing to set the right tone, encourage repeat visits, etc.?
It comes down to developing relationships, starting with relationships with the caregivers. I would say starting with relationships. Do you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, everything that we touched on, kind of like, email is your friend. Like, you want to do outreach, but really when it comes down to it, like word of mouth is key, and advertising the program excitedly, like talk about it, post about it on social media, put it on your website, and make programs that are meaningful and people will come.
And get all of your staff on board. Get all
Yeah.
of your staff to be cheerleaders for you too. Don't do it on your own. You need cheerleaders.
It's true.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. We are out of time. I want to thank Marsha, Hannah, and Maria for presenting to us today. Lots of great information. I see a question about slides. I can send those out when I send out the recording. If you're having any issues downloading your LEU, feel free to give me an email. My email address is there in the side chat box. And if you have any further questions, the contact information for our presenters are there at the bottom, so feel free to get with them. So thank you so much for presenting, guys.
Oh,
Thank
you
you.
guys
Thanks for the
listening.
opportunity.
Yeah, it was great.